Why else? Or they were cheap up until a year or two ago, we'll put it that way. Why else? Variety. Any other reasons? Pardon? Beautiful colors, okay? There's lots of reasons why we collect glass steins and drinking vessels, but I think the composition, the artistry, the color, the beauty, sort of the magnetism of the glass is one of the most important things. I'm going to give you a brief history of glass. Most of you know that glass was first originated by the Egyptians at about 4000 BC. It's formed by putting sand and several other elements into a furnace, heating up to a very high temperature where the sand melts and solidifies and changes its sort of chemical composition and turns out to be glass. In the early years, those 4000, 3000 BC, glass was exceedingly rare. Only persons like the pharaohs would have it. The amount of glass that was made was usually small amulets, beads, things like that that were used to adorn clothing and gowns. We start seeing larger mass production of glass around the time of the Romans. And from, I'm going to say maybe 500 BC, 400 BC, until about 100 AD, a huge proliferation in the way that glass was made. They developed the blowpipe technique. The Romans developed a high temperature furnace that was able to keep a temperature at a more stable throughout the heating process, which made it easier both for the glass production and also for the glass to be able to be cooled when it came out of the furnace. The earliest glass that was made in the Greek times and in the Roman times, to make those things hollow, the Egyptians, what they did was they wound the glass that they would take a gather out of the furnace and wind it around a little clay core, where sometimes even straw and manure was pushed together into a shape in sort of a clump, and then the glass was wound around that to make an object like a bowl or something that would be able to hold liquid to be hollow. Okay? Needless to say, that's not a very efficient way of doing it. Around 50 BC, the Phoenicians developed the blowpipe technique, where they were able to take a gather of glass out of the furnace, put it on a hollow pipe, blow into the glass like this, and were able to make spherical forms or cylindrical forms that were able to hold liquid, and to do so with much more proficiency. The amount of glass that was made by the Romans and Phoenicians during that period of from 50 AD or 50 BC to 50 AD was phenomenal. How many of you have gone to Trier to see, to Cologne to see the glass exhibits there? Okay. Anybody surprised at the quantity of Roman glass that's there? I mean, into the thousands and thousands of pieces. What we see, farmers still dig up today pieces of Roman glass that was produced 2,000 years ago. Now, the Romans were very efficient and very orderly in the way that they marketed things. They basically required that the bulk of the glass that was made be made in Italy, in the Roman Empire, and very little glass was made in the outlying parts of the regions because they wanted the money to flow into the economy, back into Rome, as opposed to moving it out and having the production in large areas outside the country. They did make some changes politically during the period of about 50 AD on, where it was possible. You start seeing that Germany, especially along the Rhine River, was one of the major outlying areas that the Romans allowed glass production to start there. So we did have the first glass produced in Germany at the time of the Romans. It would be probably about 50 to 100 AD. During the Middle Ages, as almost with anything else, there was a great decline in art, in production, in technology, whatever. And you see very little glass produced in Germany. You do see some 7th, 8th, and 9th century glass, very, very crude form, nothing really comparable even to what the Romans made 300 or 400 years earlier. The first glass that we start to see after that period of time is the glass that comes from Italy. In the 14th, 15th, and 16th century, especially Venice, there was a large amount of glass production, very, very high quality. And as in a lot of other things, the start of the Renaissance area, there was a huge interest in art, in science, in beauty, and in nature, where they really took the time to develop some very fine pieces, okay? And we start seeing the influences of the highly technical, highly expressive Italian glass that was done. Now, one of the things I think that's most difficult for collectors is evaluating glass, okay? You're always comparing apples and oranges, or apples and oranges and pears and nectarines and whatever when you look at glass. I think I've developed a couple ways that I look at it to try and see how different things are broken into it, okay? How do you compare a beautifully cut crystal stein from the turn of the century versus a geometrically cut cased crystal or an overlay glass from the mid-1800s, or an enameled glass from the late 17 or early 1800s? How would you compare those three things? Pardon? Why? Apples and oranges, okay? Well, maybe we can break down some of the characteristics that might make it easier to compare, okay? Let's say that we want to look at the subject or genre style. What would be some subject styles that you would expect to see? Folk art, the realistic art, very specific kinds of things, Art Nouveau, Biedermeier, any other influences, the Historismus, the Renaissance Revival at the late 1800s, etc. So we're going to look at subject or genre style as one of the ways of looking at glass. The second is the technical merit or skill that was required to produce the glass drinking vessel, okay? Whether it was cut, whether it was blown, whether it was case glass, if it was enameled, how it was enameled, okay? And then the third way is looking at the aesthetic or artistic merit or skill that was involved in that. So we're going to look at the subject or genre style. Second, we're going to look at the technical merit, skill or style. And the third, we're going to look at the aesthetics of the stein. Can we go ahead and see if we can get the lights down? Okay. I'm going to try and talk from over here. Can you still hear me? This gives me a little bit of a chance to look at the screen. Can people hear me? Yes? No? Yes, okay. Let's look at some of the areas where glass was made in Germany, or where what we now call Germany. Down in the Tyrolean region, in the Alpine region, we see a lot of glass produced starting in the mid-1700s. Over in Austria, in Czechoslovakia, in Bohemia, we see a lot of these cities along here, along the Rhine River, Cologne, Seeburg, Koblenz, Mainz. A lot of their small factories were in these towns. Nuremberg, probably one of the greatest of the artistic and cultural centers in the 1600s, was in Nuremberg. This is a piece of enameled glass from Venice, Italy, approximately 1500 to 1525. We can see some very stylized attributes that the Italians had. It was enameled. Would you say that this was a complex, technical, or folk art kind of style? Complex, basically talking about the form, and both the decorating style were both in complex style, okay? Somewhat naive in its interpretation, okay? This wonderful glass drinking horn from the early 1500s. This is cane or lattice glass. Each of these little threads in here is a 1 millimeter or so diameter glass rod, and that rod is woven together during the melting process to give you this wonderful cane effect. And then this is a flat ribbon of glass. And this is actually cased crystal, okay? These are entrapped, these are glass pieces, and they're entrapped in an overall larger glass to make its overall shape. Now, it's a very elegant piece from the 1500s. Technically difficult? Very, okay? Aesthetic? Very. Would you like to have it? Yes. And I hope each of you has one right after I get mine. This is from Bohemia. They've taken the glass, which they bought in Italy, this is a piece of Venetian glass, and put this gold, this is made in silver that's gold-plated. This drinking vessel, if you'll see on here, these knobs are a spiral. And what happens is you twist out the glass and it raises from this little pedestal, okay? Early 1500s, aesthetically, technically, and artistically, top of the line. You could look at any one of those characteristics and say this is a super piece. This is another piece. This is Venetian glass and cane lattice work. Can we get workman's comp for falling over this?
John?
Yeah. Okay. This is, the glass was made in Venice. This is a wager windmill beaker or windmill wager cup, where you blow into this hollow tube over here on the right-hand side, and it starts the weather vanes turning. And what you were supposed to do is start that blowing, get it going as fast as you could, turn it upside down, fill it with the liquid, drink the liquid, and put it back up before the fans quit moving. Okay? That's what it was done for. Now, can you think of a classier way to have a chugging contest than using something like this? Artistic aesthetic, again, this is probably the late 1500s. This is also Venetian glass. The silver mounts were made in Augsburg. This is late 1500s. Again, the cane lattice glass, gilded silver mounts, and this is a whistle cup. You blow through the dragon's tail. You can blow through the dragon's mouth, and a little whistle will come out. I want a beer. Toot, toot. Fill it up. This is what we see, the first of the real Germanic glass. And this is from the 15th century, late 1400s. And this was made in the Rhine area of Germany. Nice knobby fronts, early, almost a medieval style. Technically difficult. For them it was. For later times it wasn't. This is an incorporation. This glass, even though it's in the Italian style, was done in Germany or in the Bohemia area, in Bavaria or Bohemia. And this is in the late 1500s. They used the techniques of the Italians with the ribbon and lattice glass, but did it typically in a German form, in the beer stein, and a very, very tall and elegant Pilsner glass. This is some of the early enameled work, and as most of you know, enamel is made by the ground glass, frit of different kinds of chemicals, metallic oxides, etc., melted or poured with the liquid into what becomes a paste that's enameled. It's painted on the glass, and then when it's fired, it actually adheres to the surface, becomes part of the surface. This is among the earliest enamel glass that was made in Germany. This was made in the Bavaria region. It's dated 1572. Okay. Artistic merit? Not necessarily. Okay. Art style? Somewhere between folk and realistic. Cobalt blue glass. Here we're talking about 1670 time period. Nice shape, beautiful colored glass. Decorating style. Very simple, not real too technical. Geometric design, not much aesthetic interpretation, but still a very, very attractive drinking vessel that most of us would love to have in our collection. This is really a mark of German glassmaking. These Reichsadler Humpen that were made in the 1500s through the end of the 1600s. You have the state, you have the religious, you have the interpretation of the Germanic theme, you've got the religious interpretation, you've got the political symbolism of the different towns or organizations. Some of these you see, as this is with towns, some you see with an occupational theme, and we'll have members of the guild, or the guild masters' names would be on there, etc. Artistically, aesthetically, this is a beautiful piece. Folk art decoration, here we're talking again late 1600s cobalt glass, relatively naive interpretation, technically a very nice form. Also late 1500s, a goblet, a jug, and a beer stein on the opposite side, 1601. Here's another humpen. This is an elector's crew, and most of you know the electors were the people chosen to select the king. These include the, I think, the Margrave of Brandenburg, the Bishop of Mainz, the Bishop of Trier, Bishop of Cologne. Anybody else remember? And three others. Okay, what would you say about technical or aesthetics on this piece? Realistic style, somewhat naive, not real interpretive, technically difficult, doing all of the writing. (1683). This is a clump of humpin'. Okay? My turn. A humpin' clumpin'. Okay? This is a very complex, dated 1688. This is a very large beaker. Is this clear in the back of the room, or could that be? Pardon?
Could be a little clearer.
Does anybody know where the focus is on the side of the machine there?
Maybe the overhead light.
Okay, speaking of technical, we'll leave it the way it is. Okay. The lid of this, oops, you went past it there. Good, good, thank you very much. Okay. This humpin', the base of this humpin' is the lid of this one. The base of the top one is the lid of the middle one. You have the lid on the top. This at one time had 6 beakers or a humpin' attached to it all the way around. Technically, exceedingly complex. Okay? These designs, relatively naive, relatively realistic, but this, wonderful style, wonderful detailed work. And I'll show you a little bit about the mechanism on here and how these are held. This looks like it's a little bit out of focus. Anybody back there? Okay. We'll just be out of focus. You can see the locking mechanism on here. There's a glass ring, and there's glass hooks and loops on. There we go. Thank you very much. Thankfully. On each side so that this lifts off. An exceedingly complex piece. This was made in the Saxony region, and again, late 1600s. This is probably about 4 feet tall overall, with all of that together. Okay. You can tell they're a little bit sick. They're getting pale. They're getting better on here. This is a very nice religious scene, a nice drinking, or a nice stein. This is late 1600s. This is also from the Saxony region. Beautiful work. (1659), cobalt glass. Wonderful stein, 1680 time period. This is from the Bavarian region. Les, would you have an idea of what these would cost in Europe? $50,000 or more? They just don't come up. Most of what we see is the hysterismus glass at the turn of the century that was the copies of this. Another beautiful glass stein, late 1600s, nice interpretation, fairly complex, wonderful style. Okay, this is a glass humpin', and dates, I believe, are the 16s, should be somewhere, 1650, and this looks like from the Franconia region. Peter, is this Franconia? Okay. Franconia, wonderful realism, wonderful detail, very good styling. Most of their designs very complex. They used a lot of figures in here. Very difficult, very tedious kind of work. Excellent quality, just wonderful piece. This is an interesting hump, and I'm not sure where this is from. Might even be from the Franconia region. Dates on here is going to be late 16. This is a working mine. This is a fascinating piece. You see the numbers up here refer to the different kinds of jobs that each of these people had. Okay? Like all number 8s did the same kind of thing, all number 9s did the same kind of thing, all 12s, etc. You see how deep these shafts are. We're talking in the 1600s, we're talking tunnels that are over 50 feet deep, which is a 5-story building underground. Okay? All of this wooden work was done by the wooden craftsmen. All of these basket devices, okay? The diggers down here put it in the basket. This was windlassed up to this level. That was windlassed up to the next level and brought out through the top, okay? So not only do you get to see the artistic merit in a piece like this, you really get to see some history of the work and craftsmen that was crafts that were done in Germany in the 1600s by people other than glass or stein manufacturers. It's an outstanding piece. This is a faience stein. This is a Johann Schaefer, probably, let's see, 1663, 1665. And the reason I'm showing this is in the town of Nuremberg, after the, I believe, the 100 Years' War, there was a lot of rebuilding in the town of Nuremberg, and a lot of money in the town of Nuremberg. And a number of housemalers or studio painters were people who were artisans and artists who went together and made different kinds of pieces and decorated them. Schaefer was among the first of the housemalers or the studio painters in the 1660s in Nuremberg, and this is Schwarzlack, which is a black enamel which is painted on. Now, one of the things that's most amazing about this piece, you'll see going across this bandroll here and in the ribbons above that, you'll see the gold, okay? What's happened is the gold on there and the black on there, they have used a needle to scrape through the black to let all of this gold come through. And it looks fairly like it was just gold painted, but it's not. Each of those of what you're seeing are massive numbers of pin dots where they pricked out the black so you could see the underneath gold. If you looked at this under a magnifying glass, you would see a number of the dots that are going across there. Exceedingly tedious and complex kind of work. What would you say of the artistic quality of this piece? Fantastic, okay? Beautiful piece. Another housemeller from Nuremberg. Wolfgang Rossler. Okay? This is the black enamel on glass, the Schwarzlack technique. This has a combination of some white and some black, okay? Now, a lot of people believe that this is gray in here, okay? Gray was not necessarily made gray, okay? A lot of times it was done by the thinness of the black that let light through. So a lot of the shading that you see there is not necessarily different colors, but different amounts of enamel that's on there. Artistic, wonderful, realistic, wonderfully, technically wonderful. Another enamel piece from Nuremberg, I believe, probably late 1600s, a covered beaker on 3 ball feet. Beautiful. You'll notice that this is a transparent enamel, as opposed to some of the steins that we saw earlier that would say on the cobalt, it was very opaque enamel. You could not see through it. This technique was very thin, so you were able to see light through it, okay? An exceedingly good touch had to be done to be able to make things of this quality. Again, the black enamel technique, a footed covered beaker. Now, when you see these in books, and I had some of these slides made from some books for this talk, you start feeling that these things are about this big, okay? In most cases, we're talking pieces that were about this big, okay? So you have to understand, not only do you have this quality that's done in miniature, okay? You need to appreciate that and understand that to be able to see the quality of the work that's involved. If this is a 3-inch high beaker, think how much detail had to be done to work those seams in. They not only work with the black enamel, this is I believe a Shaper piece that was done in full color enamel. Again, this would probably be 2 to 3 inches high, maybe 10, 12 centimeters. This is a gypsy procession. Ruby glass, made with the gold, fired twice in the kiln before the ruby color comes out. This is a piece from Nuremberg. It's late 1600s. Not only wonderful complex glass work to make the glass and to blow it in a wonderful shape, but exceedingly great detail in engraving the glass with the design, the floral work around the central cartouche with the winged cherubim there, gilded silver mounts. Again, Nuremberg, probably about 1680. Covered beaker, again, gold ruby glass, beautiful engraving, beautiful silver mounts added. You'll notice that the lid is not just silver. This is an inlay lid. You see the ruby at the base of the figure on the lid. Again, technically very difficult, beautiful aesthetic. Another from the same period, engraved by probably one of the better of the engravers in Nuremberg. This is another type of engraving. This is diamond point etching. This is just scratched diamond on the surface. Very tedious, okay? This is diamond scratching. This entire scene is done just by using the diamond and scratching the surface. Hollow baluster for a stem. Good complex glass work to make the piece. Outstanding decorating work. Look at the etching on this. This is wheel ground glass, also late 1600s. Hollow baluster stem. This is a naval battle. Wonderful aesthetic. You have to think of who got this kind of piece. During the 15, 16, 1700s, how many rich people were there in Germany? There were lots, but they were all way up there, okay? Each little area might have a king, a duke, a ruling class. They were the people who had this. In each little region, there was one person, okay? There was no real middle class as we know it until you get into the mid to late 1800s, other than in some of the towns like Nuremberg and Munich and Hamburg, where there was enough business transaction so that you developed an upper level class of merchants. But this we're talking about for the royalty. These were the things that were done to satisfy their needs. Okay, this is the porcelain room, I think, at the Charlottenburg Castle. One of the most fantastic things is they were able to keep everything from falling off the shelves, even though it was upside down. Little known fact, but that's how it works. Yeah. The porcelain that's in here came from the Orient, 14, 15, 1600s, okay? As most of you know, that's why we call it China. That came from the Orient, and Marco Polo first brought some back. This was exceedingly highly prized by the Germans, and only the rich and the kings could afford this. And the development of porcelain in Europe was done to be able to produce some in Germany, which didn't happen until about 1710 in Meissen. This is amber that's mounted in silver. This is showing you some of the things that were done for the very affluent people. This is rose quartz. This is a chunk of quartz, a chunk of topaz that's carved into a goblet, one chunk. The Nautilus shell, held up by Atlas, gilded silver mounts, 1600s. This is not a Nautilus shell. This is onyx that's been ground into the shape of a nautilus shell, mounted in silver and gold. Carved wood, elegantly done. When? Late 1600s. Ivory, late 1700s. Okay, now we're getting back to the glass. This is from the Alpine regions, the Tyrolean area. Very folk art decoration, very indicative, late 1700s. And this is the first Luftschiffer, or lighter than air, glass stein. Wonderful folk art interpretation, opaline glass. This is a piece from my collection, again, very folk art. Another piece from my collection, very folk art. This is getting into the 1800s. Beautiful cut crystal. Another cut crystal piece. This is an occupational for a miller. It's dated 1788. I'm just going to go through quickly. Enameled pieces from the early 1800s. This is an occupational for a farmer. Double wall enameled, Biedermeier, mid-1800s. This is case crystal with swirl glass. The swirls are encased in 2 layers, inside and out. Overlay white over clear, white over cranberry, mid-1800s. You'll notice in the handle, you have red in the middle, or the inside. There's clear outside that, white is on the top. So it's double enamel or double layered on the body, triple layer on the handle. Has a beautiful porcelain lid with a hand-painted scene of Heidelberg. Technical, not very artistic. Both artistic and technical. Definitely artistic and technical. Cameo, 3 layers of glass. Uranium glass. Cut design, cranberry glass, cut design with silver lid. Beautiful cut artwork, again, very rare piece, made to balance on the finial. This is a nice piece that I got from Earl and Vera Christie. I was down at Jim DeMar's house and he has the same piece down there. Very interesting, mid-1800s. Overlay glass, 2 layers. You'll notice the 5 or 6 moons in back. Those are little ground facets. So when you look through one of those facets, you'll see 5 of the same scenes in reverse that's on this side. Mid-1800s. Piece that I have, this is a purple flash or stained glass, nicely geometric cut design. Staining, about 1840, fantastic glass work. Etching, nice piece that I have, about 1860. You can see some of the etching. This is a leprechaun nursing stein. Glass drinking horn, about 1870. Enameled opaline glass, probably 1860, 1870. Glass wedding cup showing relation to an earlier silver piece. Another glass wedding cup. That stained glass sign. This is case crystal. This is 2 layers. The blue and white. You can see the blue is cut back to the clear. Beautiful work. A little bit closer piece. Okay. Now, Earl and Vera were nice enough to bring some steins with them, and I brought a couple from my collection so that we can look at some of the pieces firsthand. If somebody wants to get the lights back on, we'll try and do this as quickly as possible so we can get you out in time. Cobalt glass, cut design, probably about 1870. Nice work. Computer mounts on the lid. Different colored glass. Same basic time period. Same type of design. I asked Earl and Vera to bring one of their steins, or some of the steins that were pretty unique or one of a kind, and I said I'd bring a couple also. So these are both one of the kinds that we had in our collection, and we didn't know there was a duplicate until today. Even the thumb lift, everything is the same. We now have 2 of a kind. Thread glass. This is glass, about a 1 or 2 millimeter diameter glass rod that's melted and wound around the body. Okay? They would have to put me in a home if all I did every day was to wind glass around there. If you'll look, you'll see some unevenness in different places, but this is all hand done. Very rare in a piece this size. This is the leprechaun nursing stein that I have. They put leprechaun mother's milk in here at night. They set this out in the forest. Young leprechauns will come and drink from each of these nipples. They've done it for 300 years. There's never been any mother's milk found in the morning. We have no idea how many leprechauns there are. There's obviously enough to drink from that. This is a transparent enamel. This is a Bohemian piece with the applied fronts, probably about 1870, with beautiful purple transparent enamel decoration. Beautiful glass, fantastic pewter overlay, beautiful enameling. Very unusual to find a piece that's this heavily pewter overlaid that also has that amount of enameling on there. Just a gorgeous piece. Another pewter overlay piece, Art Nouveau style. This is Earl and Vera's. Beautiful, unusual shape, wonderful style. And Earl says all these are for sale after my talk. Or something like that. Because I basically asked if I could have them free, and he said no, so I assumed then he must be selling them. Another pewter overlay piece, thumbprint glass, beautiful design. Double wall enameling, mid-1800s. White's painted on the inside of the glass, the red's on the outside of the glass to give it a little depth of field. Nice enamel, folk art, turn of the century. Nice enamel, folk art, turn of 2 centuries. 1810, 1830, what we call traditionally the Biedermeier wedding style. This is a piece of hysterismus glass. Folk art design, dated 1654, probably made 1870, 1880, a copy of the Renaissance pieces and the early German humpens. These are exceedingly nice. They're getting harder and harder to find. The quality is excellent. For years, collectors weren't interested because they hear the word reproduction, in other words, it was made in earlier style, and not realize that they're still 100 years old and much higher decoration is done on a typical like printed glaze, Vetlock, etc. Unusual glass, nice enameling, different style. It's a piece that I bought at the auction yesterday. This is ribbon glass. There's an internal layer of white. This glass are tiny panes that are melted a section at a time, pulled down to give it the swag effect. Very difficult to do this and get any kind of a uniform design like this has. It's made about 1860. It's unusual in the fact it's color. This is not cobalt glass. This is amethyst, purple glass. About 1840. Like this. Ruby glass, plain cut design, relatively common kind of enameling, but still very, very elegant. Folk art interpretation from the Alpine or Tyrol regions, built glass, early 1800s. opaline glass, probably 1870 vintage. Not really much in the way of interpretation, but wonderful technical work with the glass to be able to come up with that color and that consistency. Nice pressed glass design, definitely enhanced by nice enameling. This is a piece of uranium glass. Nice cutting, 1840 to 1860, nice star cut pattern, beautiful color. Walked into an antique show in Pennsylvania, and I saw this drinking boot, wonderful style. This is great. Looked at it closer, and it says, Reservist Bolt, 5th Company Magdeburg Dragoon Regiment, number 6, Diedenhofen, and the riding school in Hanover, 1901. And this was first prize at the riding school in Hanover. So it's a regimental drinking boot as a prize to probably the